Hello, this is your host, the Lonely Critic, otherwise known as Lonecrit, and today I have a very special guest, another YouTuber known as Critaku.
Hello everybody, I am Critaku from a channel that doesn't really do reviews anymore, but does these kind of topical videos on anime and shit, or whatever I want to do.
Okay, so today's topic is gonna be about satire and anime, where me and Critaku here will share our opinions on what we think makes good and bad satire and anime, and use some examples to defend our opinions. So, would you like to start?
If I would have to take one kind of satire in anime that I find very applicable, it's something we talked about a tiny bit earlier, is Shimoneta, a world wherein dirty jokes don't exist, where they take the sometimes internet way of reacting to certain harmful jokes and sexist jokes to the extreme and make it as in a world where those kind of jokes and every kind of profanity is not allowed, as in they are totally illegal and everyone is being monitored by the government and shit like that. It gets to this extreme where at a certain point in the show, it's all about this resistance group that is pro-cursing, and it sounds like a stupid little thing, but in the end, it just shows like how much you're actually taking away of people if you want to try and control their speech, control their language, which is a very comedic element to be able to tackle. It's also a very real topic to tackle. At the real world, this happens all the time, or like it's a prominent thing in the real world as well. What makes it good, not immediately satire, what makes a good commentary in anime? That's a good question. Basically, I would say if it actually has a way of thinking about it, if it has a certain point it wants to take in, because there's just one thing of talking in circles, not really making any like clear points towards a certain thing. It's much more funny as well with satire if you actually have the certain thing and go run with it, and not just fiddle around with it, if you know what I mean. Like, you don't fully go over the top with it. You just kind of hold yourself back because you also want to be either highbrow or whatever, but you also want that certain satire following at your side. I think you should better just focus on one or the other, because usually in anime, this doesn't apply to everyone, usually in anime, it's either one or the other. And if you do one good, you usually don't do the other one that great.
Let's see, generally, I agree with you, and just to start things off, I would like to say that I think that there are many ways to do satire well in anime, but to do satire well, you have to have a certain overall relaxed attitude. For example, one anime that I think does satire very well is... Sorry, I'm just gonna pause for a second to think of something.
An anime I think does satire very well is oh fuck, what was it again? It's that one show, you know the show with the one girl and that guy that takes place in a high school.
Well,
it's that one show that takes place in a high school,
Well, that just narrows it down to pretty much everything on this in the anime community.
Narrows it down to everything in the anime.
Actually,
there's that one girl with big tits. That one, the one with the big tits.
Why bother with just anime? That even happens in Korean soap operas. Hell, Netflix is filled with shit like this.
That takes place in every kind of media, I guess. I guess the one way to get men to actually watch their crap is to sit them down, nail them to their couch, and then flap some tits in front of the screen so that they laugh. That's cynical. Alright, god damn it. I did it again.
Indeed you did. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna start things off with one example of what I think is bad satire in anime. I would say that one example of one very mainstream example of satire in anime that I personally disapprove of is One Punch Man. In my opinion, One Punch Man is a bad satire because, while it does satirize many elements of both the superhero genre of both Western and Eastern comics, the thing is that, firstly, it doesn't satirize enough elements and only sort of reaches this point where it's a little more about hilarity rather than continuously satirizing things. For example, I get how it does the whole what happens after a hero has no more enemies that can challenge them thing, and of course many more things, such as with Moomin Rider, the whole deal about the resolve of a hero. But the thing is, I feel that the show not only does not do enough, but also devotes way too much time to serious moments that, granted, they do build up to the jokes, but that is taking too much time away from the main subject. For example, there's the fight with the Sea King, where it has multiple heroes and one anti-hero fighting the villain, only to get defeated, only for Saitama to come in with the ever-predictable one punch!
Yeah, but that was kind of the point. What I think you mainly hate about One Punch Man is kind of the predictability within its One Punch structure. And that's inherently a very subjective thing. I mean, I can't tell you to like that or to dislike that. That's totally your own opinion. Where I do think you missed the point a tiny bit is within the satire itself. It does use those satires on a lot of things. But again, at the same time, it's an adaptation from an adaptation. And that's where I sometimes think in a better example, like Mob Psycho handles this subject a little better because it lends itself way more to the comedic element, so it's able to illustrate its point with a lot more impact, whilst One Punch Man also still has that wow factor, which inherently you need in anime sometimes just to get people to watch your shit. That's why those dramatic chords are so dramatic. But I find that they work because the characters are kind of endearing in the end. Even though you know Saitama can just handle it with one punch, you are still there waiting like, can he get there already? These people are getting their asses kicked. There is a sympathy that wakes up within you because you see these heroes, and for some of them, you feel bad for them, like Women Rider. You feel bad that he gets beat up so bad, but you can also see the heroicness within his dumb attitude. Like any sane person would say, he's an idiot, he shouldn't be there. But then again, that's his job, and that's what he stands for, so it makes it endearing, even though it's inherently kind of dumb. It's where One Punch Man tries to cram so much into one, because it's also one of one's like first works and one of his more popular works, where later on it gets more streamlined, I guess, but that's like not an excuse.
Well, while I do think that a lot of the moments with Moomin Rider are indeed very good, I just think that a lot of what happens during the rest isn't that good, based on how the show overemphasizes some moments, and it doesn't diversify enough with what it satirizes. But enough about One Punch Man. You mentioned Mob Psycho earlier. Now, I agree with you that Mob Psycho is a good anime. In fact, I really do think that it's a good contender for Best Anime of the Year. Okay, the reason I think that Mob Psycho 100 is a better satire than One Punch Man is that, unlike One Punch Man, it spends a lot of time of the show setting the stage, as in character relations and all sorts of points to draw similes to many other characteristics often used in anime. For example, the Supernatural Studies Club, and its similarities between, say, the Supernatural Studies Club in Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches, or Haruhi's SOS Brigade in The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, adopting the often used idea of pretty much escapist teenagers. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So, after Mob Psycho's done setting up all these things and taking its time, in the final 2 episodes, it pretty much brings all these together with many of its anti-escapist messages centered around the character of Reagan, such as facing reality in the scene where pretty much Reagan talks down to the villains for their really reality-escaping ideals and mentalities, almost as if directly talking to the audience that we know the anime has. I mean, let's face it, we all know at least a good amount of what the people that are watching Mob Psycho are like. But anyway, so pretty much after everything is set up, Mob Psycho goes full circle with everything, and where everything gets pulled together. And to add as a nice little subplot, which, in my opinion, One Punch Man didn't have, it also has some very interesting messages about growing up and developing one's personality, centering around the character of Mob.
What I wanted to say is that with the webcomic creator, the mangaka one, what I seem to also see in like these 2 works specifically is that his adults usually have their shit together, and they are not like stuck in this adolescence little child mongering bullshit, which kind of is what Mob Psycho's message is. It's like you have a special ability and power or whatever. This could even stretch to the real world, because that's the greatness of this message. It could stretch to like people who feel so self-entitled because they have a certain thing or they can do a certain thing. It's like, no, grow up. This is the real world. Everyone's the same. Nobody cares. And it's kind of a cynical message, you could think, but at the same time, it's a little bit heartwarming for the people who don't maybe have something that great. Because people that don't have anything could also make it to be way more popular or whatever than you, just because they actually did something and don't feel so self-entitled to think they could just get it because they earn it or because they're supposedly worthy of it.
I would just like to say that this message is even reflected in the show's opening, where some of the lyrics go, and by the way, it's in clear plain English.
If everyone is not picture, maybe you can't be what you want to be.
So, yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you on that. Mob Psycho's kind of satire not only translates to criticizing a lot of anime that have been coming out for the last 1.5 decades, give or take, but also manages to give several messages that can be very either inspiring or pessimistic, depending on how you look at them.
That's what makes them real messages, is because you can either see them in a very positive light, that it's empowering because you can be whatever you want to be, or you can see it as very negative. No one is special. Everyone's the same. That's perspective. That's just realist, cynicist, or optimist. The thing that makes satire usually great is that it takes a certain element and then runs away with it. It blows it so largely out of proportion that you can't ever think that this would happen in the real world, and that's what kind of makes it funny. So that's why it lends itself really well to comedy. And Keijo, a show that's airing right now, is a prime, I would say, good example of satire within anime, because the quality of the show is not my problem. Like, I don't care if you think the show is good. I don't care, because I don't think it's that great. I'm not really watching it myself. But the idea behind it is perfect. It's women making some kind of sport of standing on a little block in the water and trying to slam each other off with their ass and tits. How much more in anime's face can you get than to laugh with the two big things it likes to do? Scantily clad women and some way to get them kind of lesbianic touching with each other. Lesbianic. Is that even a word? I don't think that's even a word.
I think it might be a word.
Might be a word? But you get what I mean, right? Like, it's this idea of girls doing a certain sport and it being cute and blowing it so far out of proportion. What do they do with it? They make it something not slightly sexist. They just make it something totally over the top. Anyone would say that's a horrible idea, but then seeing it being made is what makes it funny, because it's a comedy. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but at the same time, it warrants itself a very nice audience, I think.
Well, I haven't watched Keijo. I do agree with what generally you said based on the premise alone, but another good example of satire, in my opinion, would be not a certain series per se, but a franchise. The Monogatari franchise, to be precise.
That's what I brought up, you hack! You stole my idea!
Tough. But another good example of satire in anime is the Monogatari franchise, in which every girl actually happens to sort of encompass a certain idea or trope in anime, and then they make fun of it. For example, we have Senzo Gahara, who technically is supposed to be a tsundere, but then they make fun of this trope by making her into a character with proper motivations for acting the way she does. Or, one of my favorite examples, by the way, is of Sengoku Nadeko, who is pretty much, the shy girl that has stuff happen to her because she's totally innocent, except, what if she's not? Monogatari asked the question, what if that shy girl, what if everything that happens to her is directly her fault? This is
that's just writing. Yeah. That isn't as much satire. I think you're going a little bit off the deep end and misnaming stuff. Sorry, but I think you're kind of missing the point.
Fine then, smartass. You go.
Fine. What I mean with, the Monogatari series being a very good satire is not immediately what you mean, which is just interesting writing dynamics, where, a character is not just a flat two-dimensional character. That's just good writing. That's not immediately the same as satire. Is satire, though, is how far they sometimes take it. Like the interactions with Hachikuji, which are commentating on, the lolicon perspective and things like, people like little girls. But it just doesn't go that way. It just doesn't make it perverted or anything. No, it makes it very funny. It makes it kind of this in-joke between Araragi and Hachikuji. And they keep upping up the ante until the certain point where Hachikuji plays that she doesn't want it, and then Araragi acts like a normal dude and doesn't want to do it anymore. And that also becomes its own funny scene that ends with a circle where Hachikuji is the one that then kind of assaults Araragi. It's this laughing fun and jokes type of way of handling something that makes it satire and not just creepy. Because that same scene could have been creepy, but then it wouldn't have been funny. And here they use it for comedic effect, which is good.
Okay, fine then. I suppose you bring up an interesting point in that.
Okay, so since we're going on for quite a while now, I think we should round off with, like, for you, an example. What you think is the best up until now satire you've seen, show you've seen in anime, and then I say what I think is the best satire show seen in anime so far. As a good closure, because then you get like the one last thing you think is the best, and I get to say the one last thing and I think is the best.
Okie dokie then.
And we don't have to mention JoJo, or except if you want to mention JoJo.
JoJo isn't satire though.
But like, just leave that one line in, I guess, because like then people will know we've said JoJo. Because otherwise, I know there's going to be this one comment that says JoJo.
Okay, well, I would just like to say that I'm not nearly conceited or experienced enough to say what is the best satire in anime.
The best in your opinion up until now. Like, for me, it's the same thing. Like, I haven't watched everything, so I can't say it about everything. But from what I've watched, I think one of the best is...
Okay, but one of the best examples of satire in anime I have seen so far is from this year, Mob Psycho 100. I elaborated already on why I think it's so good, but to sort of round out my points, I think that there are certain concrete ways of doing satire well in anime and doing it badly in anime, and a lot of this relies on timing. When something comes out, what is it satirizing that happens to be big then, and how much of it satirizes.
In my opinion, one of the best shows when it comes to satire on our entire world and anime itself is Humanity Has Declined, or Jinrui wa Tsutai Shimashita. Just look up Humanity Has Declined, which is about this very cutesy looking art style show where they take 3 episodes per topic, and it's all of these little short stories that are tied together that by the end of the story you'll know how they're tied together. It follows this girl in this future post-apocalyptic fantasy almost world. Not fantasy world, but like it's so far in the future that people are back to kind of almost like how it was in the medieval times. And it follows this girl on her adventures. And one of the adventures that she goes into is this adventure where she has to make her own little empire with these elves. And at first it goes good. It's going calm. Like the elves are making little things like houses and starting with like farming and stuff like that. And by the end, the elves are making these ginormous like sculptures for no fucking reason, but they start taking in a lot of space and they start destroying all the trees on the island and stuff like that. And by the end, they can't make any more food because the ground is corrupted because they started only making one plant and shit like that. It's a way out of proportion, small version of what we do in the world. And it's funny because the elves are stupid, like how we are stupid. And that's what makes it a funny episode. And it has this conclusion, which I'm not going to spoil and stuff like that. So I heavily incline you to watch Humanity Has Declined. I think I also made one review on it on my channel a while back because I think it's just such a good show. Go watch it. I like it. I want to thank the Lonely Critic for having me on this little chat. I mean, he's been whining a while now to have it, and I was playing World of Warcraft last time when he asked me to be on it. So I guess 100 level DKs aren't a good enough excuse to not show up, apparently.
Damn right they're not.
It's 103 right now. Booyah! Okay, so rounding off, check out my channel. It's probably, hopefully, in the description or on screen or whatever. I have some videos that I make on anime topics, and if you have a certain topic you want me to discuss or whatever, please leave a comment in one of my videos, one of the 3 videos that are on topics, which are the 3 last videos, or leave it in the description of this video, as I'll be probably reading the comments here as well. Also, go subscribe to the Lonely Critic, as he is a small channel that wants to grow.
Well, this has been what I and Critaku here think makes satire in anime. Make sure to subscribe to Critaku. This is me, your presenter and host, the Lonely Critic, otherwise known as Lonecrit, signing out.